Touch me again, and I'll end you, she warned the Mafia boss. What he did next shocked everyone. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into the story. This is a tale of power, control, and a woman who refuses to be silenced. Emily had always been the kind of woman who kept her head down and worked hard. At 27, she had learned to live in the shadows, never seeking attention, always staying out of the spotlight. She worked as a personal assistant in the financial district of New York City, handling the daily schedules of some of the most influential people in the city. But the life she led wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. Her boss, the wealthy and influential Luca, was a man whose reputation was built on power, intimidation, and ruthless ambition. No one crossed him without paying the price. Emily had seen it all: powerful deals, shady business transactions, and threats made in the dead of night. But she never got involved. Until one fateful evening when everything changed. It was just another day at the office when Luca had asked her to meet him in his penthouse. She had a feeling something was off, but she went anyway. After all, he was her boss, and she had no choice. As she entered the lavishly decorated living room, Luca was standing by the window, his back turned to her, looking out at the sprawling city lights below. The tension in the room was palpable. "Emily," he said without turning around, "I need you to handle something for me. A situation that requires your special skills." She felt a chill run down her spine. She knew what this meant. He had never used those words lightly. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. "What is it, Mr. DeLuca?" She knew better than to ask too many questions, but there was a lingering sense of unease in her gut. "You've seen how things work around here," Luca continued, his voice cold and measured. "When someone crosses me, there are consequences. You've been around long enough to know what happens when people step out of line." Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She had seen what happened to people who displeased Luca, but she never thought she would be the one involved in something like this. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Luca turned around slowly, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a look of cold calculation. "I want you to make sure that the situation is handled. Do whatever it takes to make sure the person never threatens me again." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "And remember, Emily," he said, his voice lowering to a dangerous whisper, "if you don't, I'll end you." The words hung in the air, heavy with threat. Emily's heart raced in her chest, but she knew there was no way out. She couldn't refuse. She had to obey. But as she looked into his piercing eyes, something stirred inside her. A fire, a defiance she never knew she had. Luca's world was one of danger, but Emily wasn't going to be just another pawn in his game. She had a plan of her own. And this time, she wasn't going to let him have control. She would fight back, no matter the cost. But the question was, would Luca let her? The battle for power had only just begun. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us again. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you more exciting stories. Also, let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily had no choice but to follow Luca's commands. The weight of his words hung heavily in the air. His cold, calculated tone echoed in her mind. "If you don't, I'll end you." It was a threat she couldn't ignore, not with everything at stake. But as he looked at her, something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, Emily felt a surge of defiance she had never known. She wasn't going to let him control her. She wasn't going to be just another pawn in his empire of fear. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and growing tension. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the unknown. Luca's presence was always looming over her. Every conversation felt like an unspoken threat. Every glance from him carried the weight of a command she couldn't refuse. Still, Emily remained focused on her plan. She couldn't let herself be broken. She had to stay strong. She had to find a way out. One evening, As the city lights glimmered outside the windows of Luca's penthouse, Emily found herself sitting across from him in his private office, the same room where he had made his demand. His cold gaze never left her face as he spoke. "I've been keeping an eye on you, Emily. I see potential in you. A woman who knows her place, yet has the strength to fight when necessary. You may not like it, but you're becoming part of my world whether you like it or not." His words were like chains, wrapping around her, tightening with each syllable. Emily sat still, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She was trying to keep her composure, trying not to show any sign of fear. "I'm not interested in your world," she said, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. "I want nothing to do with you or your empire." Luca's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it, only a cold, calculating amusement. "You think you have a choice?" he said, stepping closer to her, his presence dominating the room. "You've already seen too much. You've heard too much. And now, you belong to me." Emily's heart raced as she stood up from her seat. The urge to run was overwhelming, but she knew it would be useless. Luca's power was far too great, and his reach was everywhere. The more she resisted, the tighter his grip would become. She needed to play her cards carefully. She needed to make him think she was still under his control while secretly planning her escape. "You can't just own me," Emily said, her voice filled with quiet fury. "I am my own person." Luca laughed, the sound chilling her to the bone. "You still don't understand, do you? You're already mine, and you'll come to realize that soon enough. I don't take no for an answer. Not from anyone." Emily clenched her fists at her sides. She was so close to breaking, but she couldn't. Not yet. She had to hold it together. As Luca turned to leave the room, his words lingered in the air. "You will learn to accept your place in my world, Emily. You will learn to submit." Those words echoed in her mind as she stood there, alone. It was clear now that Luca was playing a game she didn't understand fully, but she was determined not to lose. She had a plan. She wasn't going to let him break her. That night, as Emily lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't go on living like this, under Luca's thumb, doing his bidding. She needed to escape. But there was something else, something deeper, more dangerous, gnawing at her. A part of her, buried deep inside, was starting to wonder if she could ever truly escape his world. What if she was already too far gone? What if, despite everything, she was beginning to fall for him? The thought terrified her. But Emily knew one thing for sure. If she didn't get out soon, she might never get out at all. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Before we continue with today's story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the most exciting and dramatic stories. We'd also love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Now, let's continue with the story. Emily's mind raced as she stood there, frozen in the dimly lit penthouse, Luca's words still echoing in her mind. "You will learn to submit." The weight of his declaration hung over her like a shadow, and for a moment, she felt herself faltering. She had always been independent, always prided herself on her ability to take control of her life. But now, standing in the presence of Luca de Luca, she couldn't help but feel powerless. His power, his influence, it was suffocating. But Emily wasn't the type to give up without a fight. She couldn't afford to let him win, not now. She had to play this game, even if it meant pretending to be under his control. The next few days were a whirlwind of tension and strategy. Luca kept a close eye on her, always watching, always waiting for her to make a mistake. But Emily was careful. She had learned to mask her fear with a calm exterior, to play the part of the obedient assistant, even though inside, she was plotting her escape. It wasn't easy. Every time she saw Luca, that overwhelming feeling of power and control would hit her like a wave, threatening to pull her under. But Emily wasn't going to drown. She couldn't. She had made a promise to herself, and she was going to see it through. Then, one evening, just as Emily was starting to feel the walls closing in, Luca gave her a new task. It was simple, at least on the surface, attend a business meeting with him. But she knew better than to take anything at face value when it came to Luca. As they entered the sleek, high-rise building for the meeting, Emily felt a strange sense of déjà vu. This place, this world, she had never truly belonged here, and she never would. The luxury, the power, the secrets, It was all so far removed from her humble life. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. Luca led the way into the conference room, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. She followed closely behind, trying to keep her nerves in check. The men gathered around the table were all influential, all powerful in their own right. They exchanged pleasantries, but Emily could feel the underlying tension. She knew that something was off. Luca, however, appeared completely at ease, his smile never faltering, his eyes sharp and calculating as always. As the meeting began, Emily did her best to blend into the background, taking notes and observing the dynamics between the men. But she couldn't help but notice how everyone seemed to defer to Luca, how his word was law in this room. He was in control, and it was clear that no one dared challenge him. And yet, despite all the power he wielded, there was something unsettling about the way he watched her. It wasn't just authority, it was something darker, something that sent a chill down her spine. It was the way he made her feel as though she was the only one in the room. Emily tried to shake off the feeling, but it lingered. After the meeting, Luca took her aside, his gaze intense as he spoke. "You did well tonight, Emily. You handled yourself perfectly." His voice was smooth, almost too smooth. "But remember, you still belong to me. And that means your loyalty should always lie with me." Emily's stomach twisted. She had never felt so trapped in her life. She could feel the walls closing in again, but she refused to let him see her weakness. "I'm not loyal to anyone but myself," she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Luca's lips curved into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see about that," he replied softly. Emily didn't know what was worse, the fact that he was right, or the fact that she couldn't find a way to break free from his grip. The next few days passed in a blur, but Emily was starting to feel the weight of the situation more than ever. She had learned to play the game, but she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the act. Luca's influence was all-encompassing, and every step she took seemed to lead her deeper into his world. But Emily had one thing Luca didn't: a plan. She just had to be patient, wait for the right moment. That moment came sooner than she expected. Late one night, after returning from another business meeting, Emily found herself alone in the penthouse. Luca had gone out, leaving her with nothing but her thoughts and the distant hum of the city outside. She took a deep breath, walking over to the desk where she kept her things, and she saw it. An envelope with her name on it. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew what it was. It was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The question was, would she take it? Would she finally make her move and risk everything to escape Luca's world? Or would she continue to play along, trapped by the man who claimed she belonged to him? As the envelope sat there, waiting to be opened, Emily realized one thing. Her fate was in her hands now, and she wasn't going to let Luca have the final say. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we dive deeper into today's story, I want to remind you to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you dramatic stories. We appreciate your support so much. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily sat still, staring at the envelope in front of her, knowing it held the key to everything she had been working toward. The weight of her decision pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had planned this escape for months, meticulously laid out every step. But now, with the envelope in her hands, she felt the full force of the consequences. She could feel Luca's presence even though he wasn't there. His power seemed to infiltrate every corner of her life. She had come to realize that his grip on her was more than just physical. It was mental, emotional. He had a way of bending people to his will without them even knowing it. Emily had played her role, pretending to submit, but now she had reached a breaking point. She wasn't going to let him control her life any longer. She had to take back control. The envelope sat there like a challenge, daring her to open it. It was time. She knew this was the moment she had been waiting for. With trembling fingers, she tore open the seal and unfolded the letter inside. It was a simple note. Meet me at the docks tomorrow night, midnight. Come alone. It was a message from someone who could help her get out of Luca's world, someone she had been in contact with secretly. The plan was set, but now the fear crept in. Would she be walking into a trap? Or would this be her chance at freedom? As Emily stood in front of the penthouse window, looking out at the bright lights of the city below, her mind raced. She could feel the weight of the decision hanging over her. The clock was ticking. Tomorrow night, she would have the opportunity to walk away from Luca's world forever, or she would be swallowed up by it. She couldn't go back. The consequences were too great, and the stakes too high. The next day, Emily tried to go about her usual tasks, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time she crossed paths with Luca, she couldn't help but feel the anxiety rising in her chest. He was watching her, his cold gaze lingering just a little too long, as if he knew something was off. But she couldn't let him see the fear. She had to play her part, even though she knew her act was becoming harder to maintain. That evening, as the hours dragged on, Emily prepared for the meeting. She knew she had to leave the penthouse without Luca noticing. If he found out, everything would fall apart. But she couldn't help the gnawing feeling in the pit of her stomach. The fear of being caught, the fear of failure. It was overwhelming. But as she slipped out of the building that night, a sense of determination took over. She had made up her mind. There was no turning back now. The streets of New York City felt empty and distant as she made her way to the docks, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. She arrived at the location just before midnight, the cold air biting at her skin. The docks were dark, the only light coming from the distant street lamps and the occasional boat passing by. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Was she making a mistake? Was this her chance for freedom, or was she walking straight into danger? As she waited, her thoughts raced. Would this person truly help her, or was it all a lie? But before she could second-guess herself any longer, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, tall, with a cold, calculating demeanor that immediately reminded her of Luca. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the person she had been in contact with. The man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance. "You came," he said, his voice low and steady. "I didn't expect you to be so brave." Emily's heart was in her throat as she tried to steady her nerves. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly despite her best efforts. The man smiled, a cold, humorless smile. "I'm the one who's going to help you get out. But first, you need to understand something." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "You're not the first person to try and escape Luca's world, but you're the first to make it this far. You've got guts. I'll give you that." Emily felt a mix of relief and fear. She was on the edge now, standing at the precipice of her new life or her destruction. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Follow me," the man replied. "And be prepared. You're not just running from Luca. You're running from everything he built." As they made their way through the dark alleys of the city, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something much bigger than she had anticipated. This wasn't just about escaping Luca. It was about breaking free from an entire world of crime, power, and fear. She didn't know if she was ready for it. But there was no turning back now. She had to see it through. The man led her into a nondescript building, where a small group of people were waiting. They all seemed to be in the know, calm and collected as if they had been waiting for her. The leader of the group stood up and shook her hand, his eyes assessing her carefully. "You made it. Welcome to the resistance." Emily's heart raced as she realized the enormity of what she had just stepped into. She wasn't just running from Luca anymore. She was about to become part of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. Hello everyone, welcome back. Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss any of our exciting new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us continue bringing you the best dramatic stories. We truly appreciate your support. Now, let's get into the next part of the story. Emily stood in the dimly lit room, her hands shaking as she took in the group of strangers standing before her. They had introduced themselves as members of the underground resistance, a network of people who had made it their mission to dismantle the empire that Luca had spent years building. But Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for all of this. Her mind was still spinning from the decision she had just made. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The leader of the group, a man named Carter, stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression serious but compassionate. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said in a low, steady voice. "But you're not alone in this. We've been fighting against people like Luca for years. And now, you're part of that fight." Emily nodded, though doubt still clouded her thoughts. She had always been someone who kept to herself, someone who stayed out of trouble. But now, she was in the heart of something much bigger than herself. The world of power, corruption, and crime that Luca inhabited wasn't something she had ever imagined she would be a part of. But here she was. Carter continued, Luca is dangerous. He won't let you go without a fight. We know he's been keeping a close eye on you, and he'll stop at nothing to find you. Emily's heart sank at the mention of Luca. The thought of him tracking her down sent a chill through her, but she pushed the fear aside. She had made her choice. There was no turning back. What's the plan? She asked, her voice steady, though her stomach was in knots. Carter glanced around the room, and the other members of the resistance shifted slightly, as if preparing for something. We have a few options, but we need to act fast. Luca's operations are sprawling, and he has eyes everywhere. The first step is to disappear. You need to leave the city, lay low for a while. We'll make sure you're safe, but you can't stay here. Luca knows you too well. You need to be someone else, someone he won't recognize. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The idea of leaving everything behind, of disappearing into a world where no one knew her, was terrifying. But it was the only option if she wanted to escape Luca's control. Where would I go? She asked. Carter gave her a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. We've set up a safe house in a small town upstate. It's remote, off the grid. You'll be able to get away from everything, and we'll help you start over. But it's going to be a risk. Emily hesitated. The thought of leaving her life behind felt like a betrayal, like running away from everything she had worked for. But the alternative was even worse. Staying in Luca's world meant living under constant fear, constantly looking over her shoulder. It wasn't a life. It was survival. And Emily was tired of just surviving. She was ready to fight back. She was ready to take control of her own destiny. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm. Carter nodded, his face serious. Good. We'll get you set up. But we need to move fast. Luca won't waste any time trying to find you. And he has resources we don't even fully understand. He's not just some businessman. He's a force, a dangerous one. But you're stronger than you think. You've made it this far. We'll help you get out, but it's up to you to stay out. Emily's heart was pounding in her chest. She had no idea what she was about to face, but one thing was clear. This was the start of a new chapter in her life. A chapter where she wasn't going to be anyone's pawn. As the group began making preparations, Emily felt a sense of determination fill her. She wasn't going to let Luca win. She wasn't going to let him control her. She was going to fight for her freedom, no matter what it took. That night, as she packed her things, she felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The life she had known was slipping away, but she couldn't focus on that. She had to focus on the future where she was in control. As the last of her belongings were packed into a small suitcase, Emily turned to face the city one last time. The lights of New York City glittered in the distance, but they felt so far away now. She was leaving that world behind, and she wasn't looking back. The next morning, she left the penthouse with nothing but her suitcase and a plan. She was going to make it out, and she was going to do it on her own terms. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she had a chance at a life of her own. A life that wasn't dictated by Luca de Luca. Hello everyone, welcome back. Before we continue with today's story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our exciting new videos. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you the most dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily had been on the road for hours, driving away from the life she once knew. The city was far behind her now, but with every mile, her heart raced with uncertainty. She had made the decision to leave everything behind, to escape Luca, his world, and the powerful hold he had on her. But as the hours passed, she couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake. What if Luca found her? What if this was all just a temporary escape, and he would come for her again? The resistance group had assured her that she was safe for now, but she knew better. Luca was a force of nature, a man who could get whatever he wanted. And Emily had no doubt that he would stop at nothing to get her back. The road ahead was long and lonely, but for the first time in months, Emily felt a sense of freedom. She had taken control of her own life. But the fear of the unknown still loomed. When she finally reached the small town upstate, the safe house was everything she had been promised. It was secluded, tucked away in the woods with no signs of modern life for miles. The house was old, rustic, and far from the luxury she had grown accustomed to in Luca's world. It was quiet, peaceful even. Emily could hear the rustling of the trees outside, the chirping of birds in the distance. It was a stark contrast to the constant hum of the city. She walked into the house, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. There were no guards, no expensive furniture, just a small, cozy living room and a kitchen that smelled of freshly baked bread. It was a safe haven, and for the first time, Emily allowed herself to feel a little bit of peace. Carter, the leader of the resistance, met her at the door. "You're here. We've set up everything for you," he said, his voice warm but filled with a quiet urgency. "You're safe for now, but we can't keep you here forever. We need to move fast." Emily nodded, trying to calm the racing thoughts in her head. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice steady. Carter led her to a table where a map of the area was laid out. "We've got a few options," he began. "We've been monitoring Luca's movements, and we know he's been looking for you. He's not going to let you go that easily. But we have a few people inside his organization. We can use them to gather intel, find out what he's planning next." Emily's stomach churned at the mention of Luca. She hated the thought of him still being out there, still controlling everything. But Carter's words gave her a glimmer of hope. This was her chance to take him down once and for all. "What do you need me to do?" Emily asked. Carter looked at her, his eyes filled with respect. "We need you to stay under the radar. Luca has eyes everywhere, but we'll be able to move you again soon. In the meantime, you'll be working with our team to gather information. Your knowledge of his operations could be invaluable." Emily hesitated. The thought of going back into the world she had just escaped was terrifying, but she knew it was the only way. If she wanted to truly be free, she had to fight. "I'm in," she said, her voice resolute. Carter nodded. "Good. We'll need all the help we can get." That night, as Emily lay in bed, she thought about everything that had happened. She was no longer the woman who had cowered in the corner of Luca's penthouse. She was stronger now. She had made it this far, and she wasn't going to let him control her any longer. The next morning, she woke up early, ready to start her new life. She was determined to help the resistance take down Luca, and nothing would stop her. But as she stepped outside the safe house, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She had no idea what Luca was planning, but she knew one thing for sure. The game was just beginning. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we continue with today's story, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our latest dramatic videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the best stories. Your support means a lot to us. Now, let's get into today's story. Emily's life had changed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Just a few weeks ago, she was trapped in the glittering, dangerous world of Luca, a world that consumed everything in its path. Now, she was far from that life, hidden away in a safe house with people who had their own plans to bring down the empire Luca had built. The days had become routine, with Emily adjusting to the new life she had chosen. She spent her time helping the resistance with intel, going over the documents they had gathered on Luca's operations. The work wasn't easy, but it gave her a sense of purpose. Still, there was a part of her that felt disconnected from the life she had once known. The man who had controlled her every move was still out there, and the fear that he would come for her at any moment haunted her. Every creak of the floorboards, every knock at the door, made her heart race. But she couldn't focus on the fear. Not now. Not when she was so close to taking Luca down. The group had made significant progress in gathering intel on Luca's network. Emily had uncovered several important details about his operations that had been hidden from the authorities. But there was still one thing they didn't know, where Luca was hiding. They knew he had several safe houses, but the one that mattered most, the one he was using to plan his next move, remained a mystery. Emily was determined to find it. One evening, as the sun began to set, Carter approached her with a new lead. "We've got a break," he said, his voice low. "We've been able to trace one of Luca's men to a location just outside the city. It's not much, but it's something." Emily's heart skipped a beat. This could be it. This could be the breakthrough they needed to finally corner Luca. She immediately began preparing herself for the mission. Carter had warned her to stay cautious, but she was beyond the point of being careful. She was done hiding. She was ready to fight back. The location was a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was the perfect place for Luca to lay low, away from prying eyes. The resistance had managed to get their hands on some surveillance footage, showing one of Luca's men entering the building late at night. It was a small lead, but Emily knew that sometimes that was all it took. She set out alone, the cool night air stinging her skin as she drove towards the warehouse. Her thoughts raced as she navigated the streets, each turn bringing her closer to the unknown. This was the moment she had been waiting for, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Luca was already aware of what she was doing. The closer she got, the more tense she became. As Emily approached the warehouse, she parked her car in the shadows, staying out of sight. She grabbed the small bag of tools she had prepared, checking the contents one last time. Everything she needed was there. She stepped out of the car, her shoes crunching on the gravel as she moved silently towards the entrance. The warehouse was dark, its windows shattered and boarded up. It looked abandoned, but she knew better than to trust appearances. She approached the back door, taking out a lockpick and carefully working it into the mechanism. The door creaked open, and she slipped inside. The air inside was musty, the smell of mildew hanging in the air. Emily moved quickly, her eyes scanning the dark corners of the warehouse. She had to stay alert. This was Luca's world, and she knew that one wrong move could cost her everything. The interior was mostly empty, with large stacks of crates and old machinery scattered around. But then, she saw it. A small door at the far end of the room, partially hidden behind a stack of boxes. Her heart raced as she approached, silently slipping through the shadows. This was it. She had to get in. Emily approached the door cautiously, her hand hovering over the handle. She could hear faint voices from the other side, but they were muffled. She had no idea who was on the other side, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. She twisted the handle, stepping into the room. What she saw next shocked her. There, standing in the center of the room, was Luca himself, the very man she had been running from, the one who had controlled every aspect of her life. He was leaning against the table, a smug smile on his face as he looked her up and down. Well, Emily, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. I was wondering how long it would take for you to find me. Emily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She had walked right into his trap. The man she thought she had escaped was standing in front of her, waiting. She didn't know whether to run or fight, but she wasn't going down without a fight. You think you can just walk away from me? Luca continued, his eyes narrowing. You belong to me, Emily, and no one escapes me. Emily stood tall, her voice steady despite the fear that was slowly creeping in. I'm not your property anymore, she said firmly. I'll never belong to you. Luca chuckled darkly, stepping closer. You think you can outrun me? You think you can beat me? He said, his voice growing colder. You're mine, Emily. You always will be. Emily's body tensed as she backed away, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she didn't. Not yet. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for. She wasn't going to let him control her anymore. With a sudden burst of strength, she lunged forward, knocking Luca off balance. The fight for her freedom had only just begun. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we continue with today's story, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our dramatic new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the best content. We truly appreciate your support. Now let's dive into the story. Emily's heart was pounding as she stood in the warehouse, her body tense with a mix of adrenaline and fear. She had knocked Luca off balance, but the battle was far from over. The man she had been running from for months, the man who had controlled her every move, was now on the ground, his eyes filled with a cold fury that sent a chill down her spine. For a brief moment, the warehouse was silent except for the sound of their heavy breathing. Luca slowly rose to his feet, his lips curling into a dark, menacing smile. You really think you can escape me, Emily? He asked, his voice low and filled with venom. You've made a huge mistake. Emily stood her ground, her fists clenched at her sides. She was terrified, yes, but she wasn't going to show it. She had come too far to let him intimidate her now. I'm not your property anymore, Luca, she said, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside her. I'm not afraid of you. Luca's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Emily saw a flicker of something else behind his anger, a hint of disbelief. He had always believed he could control her, that she would always fall back into his grasp. But Emily wasn't that woman anymore. She was stronger now. You'll regret this, Emily, Luca said, his voice dripping with menace. No one leaves my world. No one walks away from me. Emily took a step forward, not backing down. I'm not asking for permission, she said, her words sharp, her confidence growing. I'm leaving. And this time, there's nothing you can do to stop me. Luca laughed, a cold, humorless sound that echoed in the silence of the warehouse. You think you can just walk away from me? You're a fool, he said, his tone shifting from anger to something more dangerous. I've let you go this far, but now you're going to regret defying me. I'll make sure of it. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she realized just how far Luca was willing to go to keep her in his world. But she refused to be scared. She had fought too hard to let him control her again. I don't think you understand, Emily said, her voice low but full of conviction. I'm not afraid of you anymore. And I'm not coming back. Luca's expression hardened, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. You'll regret that, he said through gritted teeth. You can't escape me, Emily. I'll find you, and I'll make you pay for this. You belong to me. Emily took a deep breath, holding his gaze. She was done with him, done with his threats, done with the fear he had instilled in her. You don't own me, she said firmly. I'm free, and I'm never going back to you. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the cold, empty warehouse. She knew Luca would come for her, that he would never stop trying to drag her back into his world. But she also knew that she was done running. This was her life now, and she wasn't going to let anyone, especially not Luca, take it away from her. As Emily stepped into the night, she could feel the weight of the decision she had just made. The road ahead was uncertain, and there would be dangers. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The resistance had been her escape, but now, she was ready to fight her own battles. Luca had ruled her life for too long, but now, she was the one in control. And she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. The battle was far from over, and Luca was still out there. But Emily wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to be afraid. She was going to fight for her freedom, no matter what it took. As the night stretched on, Emily knew that her journey was only just beginning. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time, she had hope. She had the strength to keep moving forward, and nothing would stop her. Emily was free, and she wasn't going back. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we dive into the next chapter of today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our latest, thrilling videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the most exciting content. We truly appreciate your support. Now, let's continue with the story. Emily had made it this far. She had walked away from Luca's world, defied him in a way that no one had ever dared before. She had fought to take back her freedom, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she was beginning to believe that she could truly escape. The safe house had given her a fresh start, but she knew the peace wouldn't last forever. Luca was not a man who let his possessions slip away without a fight, and Emily was now the one he wanted to reclaim. Over the following days, Emily kept herself busy with the work the resistance had set for her. She spent her time helping them gather more intel on Luca's operations, but a part of her couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that her past was closing in on her. Every day felt like it could be her last day of peace before Luca came crashing back into her life. The thought of him, the man she had once feared, the man who had controlled every aspect of her existence, still haunted her. He was ruthless, driven by power and control, and there was no way he would let her go without consequences. As Emily worked alongside the resistance, her confidence grew. She had come to understand the power of knowledge, the power to take control of her own life by knowing her enemy. But still, there were nights when she couldn't sleep, when she lay awake listening to the sound of her own heartbeat, wondering when Luca would find her, wondering when he would strike. One afternoon, while Emily was in the middle of reviewing documents with Carter, her phone buzzed. She glanced down and saw an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Her pulse quickened. She hesitated before answering, her hand trembling. "Hello?" she said, trying to steady her voice. A deep, familiar voice responded, sending a chill through her body. "Emily, it's Luca." Her heart stopped. It was as if the world had tilted beneath her feet. How had he found her? How was he doing this? She felt a cold sweat forming on her brow. "You thought you could just run away?" Luca continued, his voice smooth, almost mocking. You belong to me. You will always belong to me. Emily's mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had escaped. She had made it out. But now he was here, on the other end of the phone, reaching out from the darkness. You can't hide from me forever, Luca said, his tone colder now, almost threatening. I'll find you, Emily. And when I do, you'll regret everything. The line went dead. Emily stood there, her phone still pressed to her ear, the silence between her and the world growing louder. Her body went cold, her legs unsteady beneath her. This wasn't just a threat. This was a declaration. Luca wasn't done with her. And if she wasn't careful, he would tear apart everything she had built. She couldn't let that happen. Emily knew she had to act fast. She couldn't wait around, hoping the resistance could protect her. The time for hiding was over. She had to take matters into her own hands. She had already proven she was stronger than Luca had ever thought. Now, she had to show him just how much she had grown. Carter noticed the change in her expression as she set the phone down. He stepped closer, concern in his eyes. What happened? He asked. Emily turned to him, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. He knows. Luca found me. He's coming for me. Carter's face hardened. We've been expecting this. But we can't just sit back and let him come to us. We need to strike first. Emily nodded. What do we need to do? Carter led her to the small map on the table. We know where his next shipment is going to be. If we can intercept it, we can deal a huge blow to his operations. It's a risk, but it's our best shot at hitting him where it hurts. Emily didn't hesitate. Let's do it. She wasn't going to wait for Luca to make the next move. She would take the fight to him, and she would make sure he knew that she wasn't the same woman he had once controlled. That night, they moved quickly, organizing the team and setting their plan in motion. The plan was risky, but the stakes were too high. Emily knew they had to succeed. This was her chance to finally take Luca down, to cut the strings he had used to pull her around like a puppet. The convoy was scheduled to pass through an isolated route just outside the city. It was the perfect place for an ambush. As Emily and the resistance positioned themselves in the shadows, her mind kept racing. What would happen once they confronted Luca's men? Would this be her moment of freedom, or would she be stepping into a trap? There was no turning back now. Emily had made her choice. As the convoy approached, Emily's breath hitched in her chest. The moment had arrived. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her eyes locked on the road ahead. This was her fight, her freedom, and she was ready to take it back. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we jump into today's story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our new thrilling videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the most dramatic stories. We appreciate your support. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of Emily's story. The night was cold and the air heavy with tension as Emily stood by the side of the road, watching the convoy approach in the distance. The time had come to confront Luca's men. This was her moment, the chance to strike at the heart of his operation and show him that she was no longer the scared woman who had once cowered beneath his control. The plan was simple. The convoy would pass through a narrow, isolated stretch of road on its way to a warehouse. It was the perfect spot for an ambush. Emily had carefully positioned the team, all hidden in the shadows, their nerves steady despite the high stakes. This was her chance to prove that she was stronger than Luca, stronger than the empire he had built around her. As the convoy grew closer, Emily's heart raced, her palms sweating. The sound of the engines roared in her ears, the noise growing louder as the vehicles neared their position. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was no longer just about surviving. This was about taking control of her destiny. She was no longer running. She was fighting back. The vehicles came into view, their headlights cutting through the dark night. Emily motioned to the team, signaling that it was time. In one swift movement, they emerged from the shadows, moving quickly and silently to block the road. The convoy's lead vehicle came to a screeching halt, the tires screeching against the asphalt as it was forced to stop. The men inside were momentarily disoriented, their guns drawn in confusion. Emily's heart beat faster, but she held her ground, her eyes locked on the convoy's driver. "Get out of the vehicle," she commanded, her voice cold and authoritative. The driver hesitated, but with a quick glance from Emily, he knew there was no choice but to comply. One by one, the men inside the convoy exited, their hands raised in surrender. Emily scanned them quickly, looking for any sign of Luca's men. She wasn't sure who they were or how deep Luca's influence went, but she couldn't afford to take any chances. As the last man stepped out of the vehicle, Emily nodded to Carter, who was standing nearby. "Take them in," she ordered. Carter and the other members of the resistance moved swiftly, subduing the men and securing them in a line by the side of the road. The plan was working. Emily's pulse still raced, but there was a part of her that felt alive in a way she hadn't in months. She had done it. She had taken control of this moment. "Where is he?" Emily asked, her voice sharp as she approached one of the men. He looked at her, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "Who?" he stammered. "Luca." Emily pressed, stepping closer. "Where is he? What's he planning?" The man swallowed hard, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "You think you can just—" Before he could finish his sentence, Emily grabbed him by the collar, pulling him closer. "Tell me where he is," she demanded, "or I'll make you regret it." For a moment, the man looked as if he might break, but then he shook his head. "I don't know. He's always moving, always hiding." Emily's frustration grew. She had hoped this confrontation would give her answers, but it seemed Luca was always one step ahead. She couldn't afford to waste any more time. "Search the vehicles," Emily ordered. Carter and the others quickly moved to comply, rifling through the cargo and compartments of the convoy's vehicles. Minutes later, they found something, a small, encrypted device hidden in the back of one of the trucks. It was a piece of technology that the resistance had been tracking for weeks. It was linked to one of Luca's safe houses, but the information was locked behind a code. Emily stared at the device, her mind racing. This could be the key to finally locating Luca, but she needed someone who could crack the code. "We need to get this back to base," Emily said, her voice firm. "Find someone who can break it." Carter nodded. "We'll take care of it." "But Emily—" He paused, looking at her with concern. "Luca won't stop. You know that, right?" Emily's eyes darkened. "I know." She was fully aware of the danger that still loomed. This was just the beginning. Luca had never been one to back down, but neither was she. She had already taken the first step in reclaiming her life, and now there was no going back. As the convoy's men were taken away and the team returned to the safe house, Emily stood alone for a moment, staring at the device in her hand. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And she was ready for whatever came next. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was taking the fight to Luca, and she wasn't going to stop until he was finally brought down. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. Before we continue with today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our exciting new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you more thrilling content. We appreciate your support so much. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily sat at the table in the safe house, staring at the encrypted device in front of her. The small victory from the ambush on Luca's convoy was still fresh, but she knew that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. The device had been the key to unlocking Luca's next move, and she could feel the pressure mounting. Carter and the team had been working on cracking the code for hours, but there were no guarantees. Luca's security measures were always one step ahead. As the team worked tirelessly to decipher the device's contents, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Luca was closer than ever before. She had made her move, but the fight wasn't over. Luca's reach was vast, and his empire wasn't going to fall without a fight. The hours stretched on, and Emily found herself pacing the small room, her mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. The thought of Luca finding out what she had done, of him tracking her down once more, made her stomach churn. She knew he wouldn't give up easily, but neither would she. This was her moment, the moment she could finally take control. Just then, Carter walked into the room, his face grim. He held up the device, a small flash drive now plugged into his laptop. "We cracked it," he said, his voice low but filled with determination. Emily's heart skipped a beat. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice steady despite the anticipation building inside her. Carter's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he pulled up the data. The screen flickered for a moment, then settled into a map, one that was unfamiliar but unmistakable. "This is Luca's current location," Carter said, pointing at the screen. "We traced it back to a warehouse just outside the city. It's his primary base of operations. If we hit this place, we'll have him." Emily's breath caught in her throat. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. The final confrontation with Luca. She had been preparing for this, mentally and emotionally, for what felt like forever. But now that the moment was upon her, she felt a mix of fear and adrenaline course through her veins. This was the chance to end everything, to take down the man who had controlled her life for so long. Carter looked at her, his expression serious. We can't waste any time. If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Once we go in, there's no turning back. Emily nodded. She knew that. There was no turning back now. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about ending Luca's reign and finally taking control of her life. Let's go, she said, her voice filled with determination. They gathered their things, preparing for the mission ahead. The team moved quickly, silently, ready to strike. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as they made their way to the warehouse. Every step felt like a leap toward freedom, but the weight of the situation still hung over her. The tension in the air was palpable. As they arrived at the warehouse, Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself for what was to come. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The building loomed in front of them, dark and imposing, but Emily wasn't afraid. She had faced worse, and she wasn't going to back down now. On my signal, Carter whispered. Emily nodded, her eyes focused on the warehouse door. They had to move quickly, silently. One wrong move, and everything would fall apart. She couldn't afford to fail now. As the team advanced toward the door, Emily's mind raced with thoughts of Luca, of everything he had put her through. This was her chance to take him down, once and for all. The door creaked open, and they slipped inside, moving through the shadows, weapons ready. The warehouse was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of overhead bulbs. Emily's heart raced in her chest as they moved deeper into the building, each step bringing them closer to Luca. She had no idea what to expect once they confronted him, but she knew one thing for sure. This was the end. Luca wouldn't be able to hide from her anymore. As they reached the main area of the warehouse, Emily could hear the faint sound of voices. They were close. Too close. Carter motioned for them to stop, signaling the team to move into position. The tension in the air was thick, the anticipation almost unbearable. Emily held her breath as they crept closer, the voices growing louder. And then, she saw him. Luca, standing in the center of the room, his back turned to them, his arms crossed. He was waiting for them. Emily's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment of truth. She stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. It's over, Luca. Luca turned slowly, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of Emily and the team. A smirk appeared on his face, but there was no warmth in it. You think you've won? He asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. You've only just begun to understand what I'm capable of. Emily didn't hesitate. She stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. No, Luca. It's over for you. The final battle had begun. Hello everyone, welcome back. Before we continue with today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our thrilling new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the best dramatic content. We appreciate your support. Now, let's jump back into the action. Emily stood in the dim light of the warehouse, facing Luca. The tension in the air was thick, and her heart pounded in her chest. It had come down to this, her moment of truth, her final confrontation with the man who had controlled her life for so long. Luca's smirk never wavered, but there was something different in his eyes now. He had always been confident, but there was a flicker of something else, uncertainty. Emily could see it, even if he tried to hide it. She wasn't the woman he had once controlled. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. You think this is over? Luca's voice was icy, his words dripping with disdain. You're nothing without me. You'll never escape this world. You'll never be free. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'm not the same woman I was, Luca, she said, her voice steady, filled with the strength she had gained. You don't control me anymore. Luca's eyes darkened, and for a moment, he looked like the monster he truly was. You really think you can just walk away from all of this? He stepped forward, his presence suffocating. You belong to me. You always will. Emily didn't move. She didn't flinch. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her again. No, she said firmly, her voice unwavering. I never belonged to you, Luca. And I'm not your property anymore. The silence between them was deafening. Luca's gaze turned cold as ice, his jaw clenched in frustration. He took another step toward her, his fists tightening. "You're making a huge mistake," he warned, his tone dark and threatening. "You think you can take me down? You think you're in control?" Emily felt a surge of defiance rush through her. "I'm not trying to take you down, Luca," she replied, her voice calm but filled with resolve. "I'm done with you. I'm done with everything you stand for. I'm taking control of my life, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Luca's eyes flashed with anger. "You think you can just walk away? That it'll be that easy?" he spat. "You'll never be free. I'll make sure of it." Emily's heart raced, but she wasn't afraid. This was the moment she had fought for. "I already am free, Luca," she said, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. "I've been free ever since I stopped living in your shadow." Luca took another step toward her, but this time, Emily didn't back down. She stood tall, facing him with unwavering strength. The warehouse, dark and cold, seemed to hold its breath, the weight of their confrontation hanging in the air. Luca was close now, but Emily could feel the power shifting. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. She was ready to end this once and for all. "You'll regret this," Luca sneered, his voice filled with venom. "You're nothing without me. You'll see." Emily didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had already made her decision. She was done with him, and there was nothing he could say or do to change that. Luca reached for her, his hand outstretched, but Emily was faster. In one swift movement, she stepped to the side, out of his reach. Luca's hand grasped the air where she had been just a second ago. He stumbled forward, off balance, but quickly regained his composure. Emily could feel the tension in the room building, the moment hanging in the balance. She wasn't just fighting for her freedom, she was fighting for her future. "This ends tonight," Emily said, her voice firm. "I'm taking control of my life, and you can't stop me." Luca's eyes flared with rage, but he didn't make another move. Instead, he stood there, glaring at her, a sense of realization dawning in his eyes. Emily had won. The battle was over. The man who had once controlled her every move, who had twisted her into a pawn in his dangerous game, was no longer a threat. Emily had taken back the power, and there was no going back. She had done it. She had escaped Luca's grip, and now she was free. As she turned to leave the warehouse, the weight of everything she had been through seemed to lift off her shoulders. She wasn't just walking away from Luca. She was walking toward her new life, a life she had fought for, a life where she would no longer be anyone's possession. The future was uncertain, but Emily was ready for it. She had come too far to turn back now. The road ahead was hers to walk, and she was ready to face whatever came next. With every step she took, she felt stronger. This was her life now, and no one, not even Luca, could take it from her. Hello everyone, welcome back. Before we jump into today's story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our exciting new videos. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you the best content. We appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to the story. Emily walked away from the warehouse with her heart still racing. The confrontation with Luca had been everything she'd feared, but it was also everything she had wanted. She had finally faced him and come out on top. She wasn't sure if she could ever truly escape his world, but in that moment, she had taken back the power, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. As she walked through the dark streets, the weight of the decision she had made settled in. It was over. For now, at least. She had made her choice, and it was the hardest decision she'd ever made. She was walking away from everything she'd known, the power, the luxury, the control. But she wasn't walking away from fear. She was walking toward freedom. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the empty streets as she made her way to the safe house, her mind racing with everything that had just happened. Luca had been in her life for so long, his presence like a shadow that had followed her every step. But now, for the first time, she could see the world without him in it. She was free. When she arrived at the safe house, Carter was waiting for her, his face filled with concern. "You made it," he said, his voice filled with a mix of relief and caution. Emily nodded, but there was something in her eyes, something that wasn't just relief. "I did it," she said, her voice firm, as if she was trying to convince herself. Carter studied her for a moment before speaking again. "You're safe, Emily. You've done something a lot of people couldn't do. You've taken control of your life. But this isn't over." Emily nodded again, the weight of his words sinking in. "I know," she replied. but it's a start. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked with the resistance, gathering more information on Luca's operations. They were getting closer to uncovering everything, and she knew that they were on the verge of bringing down his empire. But as they closed in, Luca's presence still loomed. He was a man of power, a force that couldn't be easily contained. Emily knew it wouldn't be long before he made his next move. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer just a pawn in his game. She had taken control, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. One evening, as she sat in the safe house, reviewing some documents, her phone buzzed. She picked it up without thinking. It was an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat as she pressed the phone to her ear. "Emily," a voice said, cold and familiar. It was Luca. Her pulse quickened as she gripped the phone tighter. "You think this is over?" he said, his voice dripping with menace. "You think you can just walk away from everything I built? You're mine, Emily. You'll always be mine." Emily took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "I'm not yours anymore, Luca," she said, her voice steady, though she could hear the tremor of anger beneath the surface. "I'm free." Luca chuckled darkly. "You're not free. You're just running. You can't escape me. I'll find you, and when I do, there will be consequences." Emily's hands clenched into fists. "You can try, Luca, but I'm done. I'm not your puppet anymore. You can't control me." "We'll see about that," Luca said, and the line went dead. Emily stood in the silence, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew Luca wasn't done with her. He would never stop, but she was done running. She had taken control of her life, and she was going to fight to keep it. As the days passed, Emily's resolve only grew stronger. She wasn't afraid of Luca anymore. She had faced him and stood her ground. And now, she had the strength to face whatever came next. The resistance was closing in on Luca's remaining assets, and Emily knew it was only a matter of time before his empire crumbled. But she also knew that Luca wasn't going to give up without a fight. The final battle was coming, and she was ready for it. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Emily stood outside the safe house, looking out at the world. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. The fight wasn't over, but she knew she was ready for whatever came next. She had taken control of her life, and no one, not even Luca, could take that away from her. The road ahead was uncertain, but Emily was no longer afraid. She had fought for her freedom, and she was going to keep it. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and no one, not Luca or anyone else, could take that from her. In this intense and gripping dark romance, Emily fights for her freedom as she faces the dangerous and controlling Luca, a powerful man who has held her captive in his world for far too long. The story takes readers on an emotional journey filled with power struggles, betrayal, and the ultimate battle for control. As Emily breaks free from Luca's grasp, she discovers a strength within herself that she never knew existed. But the road to freedom is not without its obstacles, and Luca is determined to keep her under his thumb. With twists and turns that keep readers on the edge of their seat, this dark romance explores the depths of obsession, desire, and the fight for self-determination. Will Emily escape the grip of the man who once owned her? Or will the dark forces of their twisted connection pull her back into his world? With themes of power, redemption, and love that's anything but ordinary, this dark romance will captivate readers until the very end. Get ready for a thrilling ride that delves deep into the darker side of romance, where the lines between love and control blur. This dark romance is not for the faint of heart, but for those ready to dive into a world where nothing is as it seems and every choice has consequences.